Hello everyone, my name is Thomas Cyphers and this is my scenario running rough for Aviation 430 at Liberty University, multi-engine ground. So the scenario we received was during a recent trip I had an engine that began to run rough and I decided that I needed to review the one engine inoperative procedures and operations. My local flying club is conducting a training session on the subject at its next meeting. So the goals for this presentation and for this scenario are to discuss my training aircraft and the V speeds associated with that, how to maintain directional control in the case of single engine operations or loss of an engine, VMC and what factors affect VMC, and the identification, verification, and process of feathering an engine. So my training aircraft that I do all my training in is a Diamond DA-42 Twin Star. It's actually really nice to train in. As far as complex aircraft go, it can't be much simpler. It has the FADEC system, so that eliminates a lot of pilot tasks, you could say, because it eliminates the prop and mixture throttle. We don't have to do that. Everything is electronically controlled that way. So when it comes to multi-engine aircraft, you have your most common V speeds, just like any other aircraft or single engine. Your VY, VX, rotate, never exceed speed, and all that. Like mine, VY and VX is actually the same. That is a little bit different than what my single engine craft are. They're both 79 knots. My VR is 72 knots. Never exceed speeds 190 knots, which is awesome for cross countries. And then my flaps to approach is 137 knots, have to be under 137 knots. My flaps to landing has to be 111 knots, under that. I only have 2 flap settings, which makes things a little bit simpler and easier. But there is some things, the fact that it is a complex aircraft, you have your gear up speeds also, so I can drop my gear at just about any speed below never exceed speed. But to bring gear up, I have to be below 154 knots. So that's just something also to consider. But when it comes to a multi-engine aircraft, you also have some new V speeds introduced, primarily single engine operating speeds. So you have your VY SE, so VY, we know what that is, but for single engine, also named Blue Line, it's 82 knots. And for VMC, so that's the minimal controllable airspeed with the engine inoperative, which is 68 knots. So let's talk about maintaining directional control. First thing you want to do if you are trying to fly an aircraft with an inoperative engine, a multi-engine aircraft with an inoperative engine, you want to enter a zero side slip, which is up to 5 degrees of bank and half a ball deflection. That is the tried and true way of staying straight and level. You're actually crabbing. You can think of it as you're crabbing constantly. You're in a constant crab, but that's keeping you flying straight from all the factors and asymmetric thrust and all that, working on that aircraft at that point. So also something else, maintaining directional control while turning with an inoperative engine. So when you turn to the good engine, you want no more than 20 degrees of bank towards the good engine. And then when you're turning to the inoperative engine, you want no more than 10 degrees of bank. And then as well, something else that my instructor did not let me use a lot at first, which makes life a lot easier, is rudder trim. That's going to play a huge part when it comes to maintaining directional control. It's going to alleviate some of the pressure the pilot has to maintain, especially when you are trying to deal with an inoperative critical engine. Any of you that's done that, the pressure you have to have for that critical engine to offset that is so much worse than when it's your non-critical engine. So that rudder trim plays a big helping factor in that. So let's talk about factors affecting VMC. I like to use the acronym COMBATS. There's a couple other acronyms. Everyone kind of learns a little bit differently. So going over combats, critical engine windmilling, and then operating in max power, most unfavorable weight, so you're close to max gross or at max gross weight. Ball and bank, kind of like what we talked about, how much degree bank you have to have in, what ball deflection you have in. We do not want an aft CG if it hurts us a lot worse than if we had a forward CG. And then the takeoff configuration, that just comes down to flaps and gear. Basically, we want that up because we don't want as much drag. So we want flaps and gear up. We'll kind of touch back on that in just a second on the next slide. And then we also have standard day. Warmer temperatures, less performance. As we know, colder days, more dense air, it's a lot better. Recently, we failed my critical engine with my instructor. It's pretty cold here in Arkansas right now, and we were still able to climb to 500 to 800 feet a minute with my critical engine out. Just because it was so cold, we had a lot more performance just from all that dense air. It was great. So identify, verify, and feathering. So if I suspect inoperative engine or anything like that, first thing I'm doing is mixture, prop, throttle in that order. Not necessarily my aircraft. Like I said, I have the FADEC system, so it's just both throttles full forward. That's all I have to do, which is, again, nice. But for traditional complex aircraft, mixture, prop, throttle in that order. And then we want flaps up, gear up. We want to reduce any drag we can. We want to stay afloat. We don't want to sink. And then as far as identifying, what I was always told is whatever rudder you're having to really stomp on to maintain directional control, the other leg is dead leg, dead engine. And then you can kind of look out and verify that. But another way to verify that is how I was taught to verify is once you identify, dead leg, dead engine, you pull that engine's throttle back, if no change occurs, you have verified that is your dead engine. And then, like I said, right there. So let's talk about the process of feathering. Each aircraft might have a slightly different process, or in their POH, some manufacturers' recommendations on how to feather and secure the aircraft. On my aircraft, this Diamond DA-42, the FADEC, it's super simple. We want throttle all the way back, which if we verified, it's already back. Engine master off, and then we're going to verify that the propeller the engine does feather. And then we're going to secure the aircraft if need be, and so we're going to cut off fuel and turn off the alternator for that side of the engine. All fairly simple and pretty easy to do once you kind of get that flow and understanding. Yeah, thank you. That was pretty much it. This is my reference. Most of my referencing came from the Airplane Flying Handbook, primarily Chapter 13, Transition into Multi-Engine Aircraft. It didn't ask for us in the scenario what to do, what we would do if that actually did happen in that scenario. So, but it's something I feel like we should talk about. Like if I had an engine start running rough, well, I would use an ADM process to the acronym DECIDE. I would detect a change has occurred. I would estimate the need for an action to be done. I would choose a desirable outcome, identify the steps for said outcome, do the steps, and then reevaluate. So my engine's running rough. If it's not a critical failure as far as like a lot of black smoke, oil spilling out, anything like that, completely seized up, may not immediately go into feathering or shutting down that engine, just because I might be in a situation where I need any kind of power from that engine I can get to remain airborne and in flight without the descent. So I don't know if this was just all the way around how it goes, as I know that I've been taught that if we're below 3,000 feet, we immediately feather. We don't try to fix. But if we had the time and the airspeed and it wasn't a critical failure right away, I would probably try to see if I could figure out what's going on, which 9 times out of 10, a lot of the cases, it is a fuel starvation issue. So we could use that fuel cross feed system and all that and see if that helps line things out or anything like that, or carb heat, see if we have picked up any icing. But again, that's my scenario. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.